All right, in this video, we're going to show you how to go from hard wire or gas metal arc welding to your standard flux core arc welding. So it's pretty easy. All we have to do is disconnect the cylinder and take that off, and then we got to reverse polarity and then change the wire. So we're going to show you how to do that. All you're really going to need is a basic crescent wrench and some wire snips to take the wire out. So that's the tools that you're going to need for this. Other than that, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but we're going to show you how to do that in this video. All right, let's change your machine setup from gas metal arc welding, hard wire, to flux core welding wire. It's pretty simple. We'll have to change the wire out. We'll need a reverse polarity, which you could find down here, and then we'll need to take the cylinder, the gas cylinder off as well. So to start, I always like to just take the wire out. So let me get my wire snips. Before you cut this, make sure that you're always holding on to the piece closest to the spool of wire. Then you're going to want to cut it. There's always places on the spool that you can feed the wire through so that it doesn't come unwound. So to kind of give you a close-up, never let go of this because it will bird's nest and it will go crazy. So you can see here there's some holes. You want to feed your wire back through that and kind of bend it so that it can't come out. So that's how you want to do that. So we got the wire out. You're going to want to pull the wire out from the end, or through the liner, out the MIG gun, and get it all out of there. So you can see it coming out here, and we're going to want to pull it through. I always like to pull it through the gun. Sometimes you need pliers, but if it's a clean cut here, it makes it really simple to pull out. So just pull out all that wire. You obviously can't reuse this, so you just scrap it. And that's ready to feed wire back into it. Pretty simple. And the next step, I'm gonna reverse the polarity. So for flux core, you want to be DC negative, and for solid wire or gas metal arc welding, you want to be DC positive. So the polarities need to switch. It's pretty simple. Every welder's a little bit different. Sometimes you could reverse the polarity up front, but in my case on this welder, I need to do it on the inside. So I just need to swap those two wires, and it's pretty simple. So there's just two nuts I need to take off, and then I need to put them back on. It's a little time consuming, so I will do that here in a minute. So with that, we're going to start feeding in the new wire. So as you can see here, we have our flux core wire. For this machine, my wire needs to go around that way. In some cases, it does go in reverse. If this is more flat and pointing your actual wire feeder is set down lower and it comes down lower, most of the time it feeds through this way. But as you can see up here in this case, the wire is going to go down and around that way. So you're going to want to find which direction this wheel is going, and the wire's going this way, so I'm going to put it on that way as well. I always like to put it on first. I always put this piece back on so that the wheel doesn't fall off. I have had in some cases it fall off, and then the electrode or welding wire break, and it just becomes a mess. So I always make sure that I put that back on, and yeah, we're ready to start feeding some wire through. So I'm going to cut this, get a nice good flush clean cut so that it feeds through really well. Pull the excess stuff out. So that is is good. Do one more cut, it's not really clean. So get that cut nice and clean. I'm gonna feed it through. And then I'm gonna clamp my rollers back down and lock that in. And that is pretty simple from there. And then I'm gonna want to take my gas cylinder off and my regulators. So I have a crescent wrench. We are going to take it off. You want to always make sure your gas is completely shut off before you do this, or you will lose quite a bit of gas. So always make sure your gas is completely shut off, which I did, and it is ready to come off. I'm taking it off the back first, and then I'll take my regulator off. I'll take my regulator off of the cylinder. So just a standard crescent wrench. And we're gonna take this off. I disconnect at both places just because when I take the regulator off, I always make sure I put the cap back on the cylinder in case when I'm transporting it, it doesn't fall over. So always make sure you do that. Make sure that's on nice and tight. I still make sure my chain's on my machine just in case it wants to fall over. And I just take this regulator off and hose, put it on a shelf, and I just normally leave the bottle on the welder in case I want to switch it over in the future back to gas metal arc welding. All right, so now that we got our welder all set up for flux core, the only thing that we got to do is reverse the polarity and run the wire through the machine. So we got our wire on, it's through the rollers, and we just got to make sure that the wire comes all the way through out the end of our welding gun. So we're going to turn the power on. I'm going to turn up my wire speed as high as it could go. I'm going to take my nozzle off and my contact tip. In some cases you have to take your diffuser off, but I'm not going to for this one. And then I'm going to make sure that my line is straight. You want to make sure there's no kinks in it or twists. That just makes the wire feed through a lot easier. So we're going to start feeding the wire through. Pull the trigger. You can see there my wire kicked up to a higher speed, so it should feed through really quick. Pay close attention to the end so that you know when it's coming out. It just came out. So then I'm going to put my contact tip on and my nozzle. That's good. So now we're going to reverse. Now that we got that done, we'll turn off the machine. I'll unplug it and then we'll reverse polarity and we will be ready to go. So I got my machines turned off and I'm ready to reverse polarity. So for flux core wire, your machine needs to be at DC negative, and for gas metal arc welding, it needs to be at DC positive. So in this case it's flux core, so we need to be DC negative. So I just need, on my welder specifically for this one, my polarity change is down here. In some cases it's in the front, so you just need to reverse it from negative to positive and vice versa depending on what you're doing. So mine's on the inside. All I got to do is get a ratchet and take off the bolts or the nuts inside here. Loosen those up. On some welders, these are like a hand piece that you just push in and twist. And those are normally on the front, if that's the case. But this one, so I'm switching from negative to positive, just reverse those and put the nuts back on. It's super simple, nothing too complex about it. A lot of times too, depending if your welder's different than mine, just look in the owner's manual. It'll show basically how it needs to be swapped. Get these tightened down nice so that they don't come loose. Never had one come loose, but nice and tight there. And that's a polarity change.